Hey, before we get started, I just want to let you guys know about my comic Dark Phantom. Issues 1 through 7 are available now for free on Webtoon. We've worked really hard on it and it would mean a lot to me if you would check it out. Thanks, and let's get on with the video. Alright, I'm about to go full Draper mode. How often do you think about the universe? How, even with all the innovations and discoveries we've made, we've only scratched the surface of its mysteries? Do you think about what infinity truly means, or if it's even possible for us to fathom it? Do you think there are simply some things in the universe us mortals were never meant to know about? What if, somehow, someone was able to hold infinity in their hands and warp reality to their will? And what if that person believed nothing and nobody in all of creation mattered? So, anyone else here been feeling a little existential lately? Like, just sitting at home, trying not to let the days blend into each other, wondering why anything happens in the universe or if there's any rhyme or reason to it at all? Me neither, but if I did feel that way, I'd probably turn to some high-concept sci-fi to try to make sense of it all. On an unrelated note, I recently reread one of my all-time favorite comic storylines, The Infinity Gauntlet. Most people know it as the comic that was used for the source material for the last two Avengers movies. And they do share quite a few similarities. They both have Thanos. Thanos uses the Infinity Gems to wipe out all life in the universe. Thanos is purple in both of them. Okay, look, I know that here on the Class Act Jack channel, pretty much all of my videos are about how every comic book movie is bad because they're not like the comics. But honestly, I love both these versions of Thanos, and they're both trying to do very different things. The movie is much more of a character study of Thanos, whereas the comic is trying to do something a lot grander. I've never seen a comic, or really any other piece of media for that matter, so effectively tackle the idea of infinity. I'm going to be saying infinity a lot in this video, get ready for that. It's not your typical superhero story. The goal is not to stop Thanos before he can assemble the Infinity Gems or find some loophole or MacGuffin to negate their power. Thanos starts the story with the Gauntlet, and when he has it, he is all-powerful. Period. Full stop. Everything in all of creation is now subject to his will. Before anyone even realizes what's happening, he kills half of all life in the universe and knocks Earth out of orbit with barely a thought. One of the first images we see in the comic is the word God carved out of stone as a tribute to Thanos by Mephisto, essentially Marvel Universe's devil. And with one motion of his hand, Thanos annihilates the monument, and later in the book rearranges the planets to spell out his own name. Look, I never said it was subtle. I love the way this is articulated in the comic.
The Dark God's anger and frustration are awesome in force. The psychic wave of power rises from the stellar monument of love and washes out into the ether. The first heavenly body to encounter the wave is a 20-million-year-old red giant star. Every law of nature revolts against this jewel's continued existence. Its end is breathtaking.
I just love that line. Every law of nature revolts against its continued existence. Thanos is not a Dragon Ball villain that our heroes need to power up to defeat. With the Infinity Gauntlet, he commands the entire universe. With the Infinity Gauntlet, he is the entire universe. But, of course, this being the Marvel Universe, there are other gods out there who aren't too happy about Thanos moving in on their turf. The first we see of them is when Odin calls a meeting of the chief gods from every major pantheon on Earth, proposing a united front against the Mad Titan. They all agree, but before they can even make a single move against him, he traps them in their own dimension with barely a thought, taking them out of the fight for the rest of the story. But again, this being the Marvel Universe, there are gods above those gods. The universe's second and perhaps greatest line of defense are the grand cosmic entities, some of which are the embodiments of abstract universal concepts like love, hate, chaos, order, and eternity. The only ones who refuse to fight are the Watcher, who has sworn to only observe and never interfere except when he does interfere, and the Living Tribunal, who has deemed that, by the universal law of survival of the fittest, Thanos has become the new supreme cosmic being and he won't stand in the way of nature. But the rest of them all choose to stand against Thanos. I like how the battle is portrayed in an abstract manner, like we couldn't even possibly comprehend what was happening even if we were to see it. This battle is reality versus reality. And even though they certainly put up more of a fight, even the cosmic beings with their combined power are no match for infinity. Thanos may be shown to be above godhood in this story, but he's also sorta written to mirror the Christian God. I've already mentioned how he has the devil, or in this case Mephisto, sitting beside him trying to subtly sabotage him, but he also creates a new person who he calls Taraxia, much like God creating man in his own image. I'll be honest, I don't know enough about religion to point out all the similarities. If there are more, I missed, but I just thought that was an interesting detail that was worth mentioning. But that does bring me to my next topic, and that's how Infinity Gauntlet explores humanity's relationship with God. I already talked about how the gods didn't stand a chance against Thanos, but that's nothing compared to what the mortal population has to deal with. Before anyone even knows what's going on, Thanos does his infamous snap to wipe out half of all life in the universe, as well as knocking Earth out of orbit. If the Silver Surfer hadn't shown up to warn people about Thanos, no one would probably have ever figured out what was going on. This is a great illustration of how humanity, as dominant as we think we are, can easily be taken off guard by the seemingly random whims of nature. I also want to touch on some of the individual characters, but since this is such a huge event, there's no way I'm going to talk about them all, so I've selected a few whose stories I think best play into the themes I'm talking about. Sorry Moon Knight fans, but I don't have much to say about his, 2 pages that come out of nowhere and don't amount to anything except for what I assume to be a tie-in to a standalone book. I don't know, I didn't check. Anywho, let's start with Thor. At the time that Infinity Gauntlet was published, the mantle of Thor was held by a mortal named Eric Masterson. According to Wikipedia, there's also a porn star by the same name. Whoopsie daisies.
How embarrassing!
Thor is a pretty important player in the story, but I'll be honest, he's certainly not the most memorable character here. I really just wanted to bring him up since, much like Thanos, Eric is a mortal who obtained godhood. Just thought the connection was interesting. Next up, we have Dr. Doom, who represents the greed humanity is capable of. Much like Thanos, Doom believes himself to be the ultimate being in the universe, and thus is the only one truly deserving of the power of the Infinity Gems. I like that when the heroes who survive the snap are assembled to go up against Thanos, Doom just inserts himself into the group and then assumes he's gonna be in charge. Even though they're up against the unfathomable, Doom still believes he'll be able to handle it no problem. Again, it all feeds into that idea of hubris. Even though Doom is a mere mortal, he still believes that he's better than everyone else. And then, during the actual battle, when it looks like they just might be able to defeat Thanos, Doom just has to sabotage their chances by trying in vain to get the gauntlet for himself. But then, on the flip side, we have Captain America, here to represent the resilience of humanity. This is a pretty iconic scene. In the Avengers' big battle against Thanos, when every single one of his allies has been taken out, Cap still chooses to walk right up to the Mad Titan and fight to the bitter end. And yes, he obviously doesn't stand a chance, and this may seem like a futile gesture, but it's still so powerful because it's Cap standing up against the living embodiment of nihilism and saying, yeah, compared to the grand scheme of things, I am a speck, but goddammit, I'm alive and I'm fighting for the right of everyone else in the universe who is also alive. We may not matter to the universe, but we matter to each other, and that's what's important. Especially in these times, that's just a really uplifting sentiment. But as much as I like this scene, Captain America is not the main character of this story. Unlike the movie, even though the Avengers play a significant role here, they're not the main protagonists in the comic. That role goes to the next character I want to talk about, Adam Warlock. Continuing with the themes of man achieving godhood, Adam Warlock was created by a group of scientists called the Enclave in an attempt to create the perfect life form. Much like Thanos, Warlock's characterization here sort of harkens back to the Christian idea of God. Throughout the story, he's sending our heroes into battles he knows they can't win, and he rarely ever gives the full details of what his plan is. Throughout the story, Warlock is joined by the Silver Surfer, who just keeps getting frustrated at how vague he's being. The Surfer doesn't understand why Warlock doesn't just say what his plan is, and wonders if he even has a plan at all. But every time he asks, Warlock just tells him to have faith that, even though it may look bad and his plans may seem to be failing, it will all work out, and of course he's right. And this is because Warlock knows his enemy so well, possibly better than he knows himself. You see, when Thanos originally obtained the Infinity Gems, Warlock was living inside the Soul Gem. This allowed him to briefly see inside Thanos' soul, exposing him to the Mad Titan's greatest weakness. If you've never read the comics but know one thing about the comic version of Thanos, it's probably that he's motivated by his love with the living embodiment of death. And yeah, that's true, but that's really just the clickbait Screen Rant article headline version of the story. That may be why he starts this crusade in the first place, but it kind of fades away partway through, as his monument to death becomes a monument to himself. What's important to understand about Thanos is that he is a nihilist, believing that nothing in the universe ultimately matters. And by his constant chasing of absolute power, maybe he can make the rest of the universe see the world as he does, or maybe he can even change the rules to give meaning to his own life. At least, that's what he thinks he wants. But Warlock has seen his soul, and he knows the truth. Deep down, Thanos does not believe himself to be worthy of such power, and will constantly sabotage himself whenever he gets close to achieving his goal. He eventually does exactly that, leading to his granddaughter, Nebula, whom he had been torturing for the entire story up to that point, to obtaining the gauntlet. She doesn't even know how to wield that much power, and yet she is still able to effortlessly defeat the cosmic entities just like Thanos did. But, of course, she was not able to hold on to that much power. After another struggle, the gauntlet is finally in the hands of Adam Warlock, who is the only one in the entire universe who is able to use it properly. Unlike Thanos or Nebula, Warlock has no trauma to work through, no agenda to fulfill, and nothing to prove to himself or anyone else. His only want is for the universe to continue as it was meant to. But as the new supreme being of reality, he does interfere in one way. He whisks Thanos away to an uninhabited planet where nobody will ever find him. And it's here where Thanos finally finds what he had been searching for all this time. He's living a simple life, running a farm and living in a small cabin. And he's happy with that. He may not have infinite power anymore, but he's alive. And for once, that's enough for him.
Adam Warlock, a being who wished nothing more than to spend the rest of his days within the peaceful environment of the Soul Gem. He now possesses the infinite power and all the responsibility that goes along with it. While I, whose entire life was dedicated to pursuit of power, now find myself scraping out a living from the soil. Irony worthy of the drama. Yet strangely enough though, I envy not Adam Warlock. Somehow I feel that in the long run, Thanos of Titan came out ahead in this particular deal.
Hey, hope you liked that video. If you did, consider liking and subscribing. If you really liked it, maybe drop me a buck on Patreon. If you want to keep up to date on what I'm up to, follow me on Twitter @ClassActJack. Thanks to everyone who provided voices for this video. I'll leave links in the description as well as put them up on screen here. Links to everything in the description. I'll see you guys next time.